Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. November 6th, 2017.
The Kuhner Report, presented by Kelly Financial Services. This is the Kuhner Report.
Was it left-wing terrorism again? This is now the question that I'm asking that the mainstream media doesn't have the guts to ask. My friends, another massacre. And again, the victims were the so-called deplorables. This time, it was in Sutherland Springs, Texas. Here is now the absolute latest. A gunman by the name of Devin Kelly, dressed in tactical gear, wearing a black mask with a skull on it, an AR-15 style assault rifle, entered into the First Baptist Church Sunday at about 11:30 a.m. It was in the middle of the service. According to witnesses, he began to shoot at the church from the outside. He then walked into the church. His first victim was the person who was going to deliver the homily, the fill-in for the pastor who was away that Sunday along with his wife. He shot this fill-in homilist in the back. Immediately he was dead. He then began to rain bullets, picking everybody off one by one. It was an absolute bloodbath. 26 confirmed dead, at least 20 wounded. What is even more heartbreaking is the victims range from as young as 2 years old to as high as 72 years old. A 2-year-old baby has been killed. A 5-year-old child has been killed. The pastor and his wife were both away that weekend, but they have adopted a 14-year-old girl. I've seen pictures of her. She's absolutely beautiful. She was one of the victims. She was at that ceremony, at that mass, at that service, and she was shot dead. This is a small rural community. It is overwhelmingly Christian. The killer, we now know, is somebody who was discharged from the Air Force for having beaten his previous spouse and child. According to people that knew him all the way back to high school, his high school classmates describe him as creepy, crazy, weird. According to investigators, they say that he got remarried, that apparently he had a falling out with his second wife, Danielle. They also have a child, and with the in-laws. It appears that the in-laws attended that church. His current wife, Danielle, was also a former teacher at that church. So it appears that one of the motives was to potentially kill his exes, the family of his ex, at the very church that they attended. Furthermore, there is a huge picture that he put up on Facebook with his AR-15 saying this is a really bad B. I can't say the word on the air. However, when you dig deeper, the left is already trying, and I want to get to this later in the show, they are already trying to turn this into gun control. Gun control, gun control, gun control. I kid you not, the bodies were not even taken out of the church. And Elizabeth Warren, I'm going to read her tweets a bit later, was already calling for gun control, blaming the Republicans, blaming conservatives, blaming defenders of the Second Amendment. They didn't even know his identity, his name, his motive, how many were dead. They knew nothing. All they wanted to say was gun control, gun control, gun control. However, when you look at his Facebook page and you talk to people who knew him, they say that he became a rabid atheist. That, in fact, he was a militant atheist who developed a real loathing for Christians. That, in fact, it bordered really essentially on bigotry. Now, maybe it was the bitterness of his breakup with his current wife, maybe the hatred he had for his in-laws. I don't want to get into this guy's mind, but without question, this was a man who is a militant atheist who, in fact, would hound people on Facebook or confront people to such an extent that they found him a nuisance. In fact, on Facebook, they kept defriending him because they didn't want to be friends with him anymore, because all he did was go on about how Christianity is evil, people of religious faith are evil, religion is the root of all evil, and that everybody should embrace atheism. He was also a rabid political liberal. He loved CNN. He was a big supporter of all kinds of left-wing liberal political causes. So, if nobody else has the guts to say it, I'm going to say it. This was an act of left-wing terrorism. That's what this was. This was done by a left-wing atheist, a militant atheist, who deliberately targeted a Christian church, in this case the First Baptist Church, because they were Christians. Because, in Hillary's infamous words, they were the so-called deplorables. And what I find particularly disgusting is that we now have a massive terrorist phenomenon in this country, and yet nobody dare speak its name. And so, as I've said on this program many times, and I'm going to say it again, if I am not here to speak the truth, then there's no point in me being behind this microphone. There are now two kinds of domestic terrorism in the United States of America. Number one is Islamic terrorism. There's no question about that. But number two, and in terms of a body count, it is now starting to rival that of Islamic terrorism. And that is liberal left-wing terrorism. You look at what took place just on Sunday at Sutherland Springs. Think Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the shooting of Stephen Scalise and other congressional Republicans by a deranged Bernie Sanders supporter in Northern Virginia. Look at what happened in Nevada, the massacre at Mandalay Bay. Yes, liberals love country music, but the overwhelming supporters of country music, we all know this, it's an open secret, tend to be Trump supporters, tend to be conservatives, and tend to be Republicans. My friends, we deplorables, we're starting to drop like flies. And it doesn't matter anymore, because now they're coming after us in concerts, they're coming after us in churches, they're coming after us on baseball diamonds, they're coming after us on campuses. It doesn't matter. You go to a free speech rally in Boston, they will beat the hell out of you if you're an old lady. And the media will cover it up. And so what is now happening in this country, to quote Reverend Jeremiah Wright, the dear leader's spiritual advisor for 20 years, the chickens are coming home to roost. Because when you keep pumping into the political bloodstream what the liberals, the media, and the Democrats have been doing now for years, that Christians, conservatives, people in middle America are nothing more than a bunch of racists, sexists, bigots, homophobes, Islamophobes, fascists, and you repeat it again and again and again and again, what do you think is going to happen? When you call them deplorables, KKK white supremacists, fascist scum, who in Hillary's words are irredeemable. They're not even, according to them, Americans. You dehumanize a group of people to such an extent, and through sheer repetition, you drum it into the public psyche. You don't think you're going to get mass killings? You don't think you're going to start to incite political, liberal, left-wing terrorism? We live in a deeply bigoted age. We do. But it is bigoted against the so-called deplorables. It is bigoted against Christians, against conservatives, against people in middle America. That's the real discrimination. That's what exists across our culture, in academia, in the media. It is embraced by an entire political party, the Democrats, and their creatures, their ugly creatures, are the Stephen Paddocks of the world, the deranged Bernie Sanders supporters of the world, the Antifas of the world, the Black Lives Matter hate groups of the world, and now the Devin Kellys of the world. And yet, amid the massacre, amid the horror and the bloodbath, there were heroes. And so these two heroes showed the real spirit of America and the real spirit of Texas. And so as this butcher, this assassin, this left-wing terrorist, as he gunned him down in the church, defenseless, one by one, a plumber, a neighbor, heard the shots. His name is Stephen Williford, 55 years of age. He took out his shotgun and he confronted the shooter, Devin Kelly. And even though he had a bulletproof vest, he found the gap in the vest. Apparently this guy is a expert shooter, Stephen Williford, and shot him in the gap with a shotgun, hitting him in the side, badly wounding him. Then another neighbor who witnessed this shooting came and gave pursuit. Williford went into his truck. His name is, I want to make sure I get the name correct. His name is Johnny Langendorf. And together in a pickup truck, they gave pursuit to Devin Kelly. Kelly went into his SUV. He sped off. Milliford went into the passenger seat. He followed then Devin Kelly. Langford drove his pickup at 95 miles an hour, giving chase on a 911 dispatch. Devin Kelly had a hostage in the car with him. The whole time, Stephen Milliford had his gun trained on him. They would not let go of the pursuit, telling the police exactly where he was. Eventually, through loss of blood and consciousness, Devin Kelly, the car swerved on the road. He lost control of his SUV, and it basically flipped. He lay on the ground. Stephen Milliford then got out of the truck, made sure that the passenger escaped, the hostage, and then, according to what police say, because there's some confusion, Devin Kelly apparently committed suicide, died of a self-inflicted wound. There was thought that maybe he died from the shots by Milliford, but apparently he killed himself, and that was his final act. Had it not been for these two men, there could have been many more dead. And so the question now I have to ask is this. I have to ask this question. Is it now time for people to have concealed carry licenses and bring a gun to church? And in particular, is it now time for priests, pastors, reverends, rabbis, I don't care, to say to one person, I want you to carry a gun, conceal carry, sit in the back, and provide security? Because had there been somebody in that church who was carrying, maybe one or two would have been dead, but not 26. My friends, enough is enough. Terrorism is alive and well in America, whether it be Islamic terrorism or liberal terrorism. And it's time that we defend ourselves. 617-266-6868 is the number. Your reaction, your calls. Next. 1224 here on the great WRKO. Okay, listen now to a witness on the scene that saw the shooting take place and saw the two heroes then give chase. Roll it, Brittany.
Did your husband see the shooter go into the church And did you hear the gunshots continue after that?
Yes. The shooter walked back into the church, and I was calling for my husband, and then I'm on the other side of the house, and I hear the shots get further apart but louder. And so I run immediately back to the front of the house where he's at, and he informed me that a neighbor was outside, actually in our driveway, exchanging gunfire with the shooter who was across at the church. And, I told my husband, well, if that's him, then you need to get down. And, there was some damage to our vehicles and to our house, and, that's by no means an issue. But for it to be that close to home, immediately after that, the shooter got in his vehicle, obviously spooked by, the gunfire from the neighbor, and he sped off through a busy intersection down, and the neighbor ran across the intersection to another vehicle that had witnessed it. I think everybody's seen Mr. Langford in the black vehicle, and they followed him. They gave chase.
It's an incredible story. And I got to tell you, those two men are absolute heroes, because there could have been a lot more dead. Mark in New York City, thanks for holding and welcome.
Jeff, thanks for taking the call. Jeff, 2 points. On Friday, I called into your show to warn Kuhner Country to be on high alert this weekend between November 4th to the 6th. I called in at around 1 p.m., and I think Jared answered the call, and then I was put on hold for like 2 hours, Jeff. So I wasn't able to get on the phone on Friday. But the reason why we knew that something was going to happen was because Antifa took out a full-page ad in the New York Times talking about how they're going to begin the war against Mike Pence and Trump and conservatives beginning November 4th. Then you got Rand Paul being assaulted and attacked. And then on this website, on November 4th at 12:43 a.m., somebody posted a picture of a bunch of guys wearing masks, holding the Antifa flag, dressed in all black, with military weapons, and they say on the post, "Watch the news for Texas tomorrow, something big is coming." So there were people who knew in advance that this thing was going to go down, Jeff.
Mark, thank you for that call. Well, look, I can just tell you this. You're not going to hear this from the media. He was a militant atheist. He was a rabid liberal. Just look at his Facebook, look at his social media. There's no question about it. He hated Christians, couldn't stand conservatives. And now there are some texts that are coming out where he was threatening the mother-in-law, or I guess the ex-mother-in-law. So there could be a family issue as well. But to me, there's no question about it. This is left-wing liberal terrorism. It's obvious. He targeted them because they were Christians. He targeted them because they were conservatives. He targeted them because he was an atheist and he wanted to take out the so-called deplorables. And I'm going to get into Rand Paul later this show. Senator Rand Paul was assaulted this weekend in Bowling Green at his home, mowing his lawn, literally at his home, by his moonbat left-wing neighbor, 5 broken ribs, beaten black and blue. He's now in a hospital. He may not even be able to go back to work for weeks, if not months. So who are we kidding? Yes, there's Islamic terrorism, no question about it. But there's also liberal left-wing terrorism, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. Russ, you're up next. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, Jeff, only ignorant fools blame guns. Yes, the people you should blame is, number one, yes, the demented atheists, the ACLU, gutless hack judges, and the divisive Democratic Party. And what do you expect from a country now that has banned God in our schools, bans God in the town square? In the left stream media and Hollywood, all they do is promote a sick society. If you believe in God, family, and country, then they consider you a religious fanatic. Now, in reference to weapons, remember one thing: in a court of law, okay, almost any product can be considered a deadly weapon, from a stick to a motor vehicle. So when they turn around, they say we need to ban a gun because it's a weapon that can kill. Many things can kill, and you can be put in prison because you killed someone with a product that is considered in the court of law again as a dangerous weapon.
Russ, well said. You're dead on. Look, I can use almost any weapon or anything to kill somebody. So for the left to keep obsessing over guns, really it's a sickness. And their goal is they just want to disarm us. We know what their game is. I've got a lot more, believe me. The latest on the massacre in Texas. Let's go to Jackie Murphy in the newsroom.
There's one overriding thing that I took away from the people of Sutherland Springs, as well as the surrounding communities who were there, who knew everybody in that very small town. And that is, this is an area of the state of Texas, like so many parts of our state, where people rely upon God more than anything else. And believe me, they were relying upon God last night.
That was Texas Governor Abbott talking about the massacre that took place in Sutherland Springs, Texas, by a militant left-wing atheist by the name of Devin Patrick Kelly. So let me ask all of you this. It's the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Bill Kelly Financial Services. Was Sutherland Springs an act of left-wing terrorism? If you believe the answer is yes, and I'm a big yes on this one, text the letter A to 680, 680. If you believe the answer is no, he was upset at the mother-in-law, politics had nothing to do with it, he was just a deranged guy, text the letter B to 680, 680. As always, you can vote online at WRKO.com. Whenever we have these kinds of massacres, these sort of mass shootings, and this is, by the way, the deadliest shooting in a place of worship in American history, one of the deadliest in the history of Texas. It brings out the best of us, and it brings out the worst of us. Here is an example of the best of us. Johnny Langendorf, a resident of that town, heard and then witnessed the shooting. He got in his pickup truck. The plumber who shot and confronted Devin Kelly got into his truck, and then he gave pursuit. Had it not been for him and the plumber that went with him, many more would have died, and they were actually on the road chasing at 95 miles an hour, and Johnny Langendorf the whole time was on his dispatch calling 911, telling the police exactly where the shooter was. Roll it, Brittany.
I never got to look at him. I never really saw him. I saw the gunfire. The gentleman with the rifle came to my truck as the shooter took off, and he briefed me quickly on what had just happened and said that we had to get him, and so that's what I did. I was on the phone with dispatch the entire time. I gave them the direction we were going.
I mean, honestly, I don't know how many lives they saved, but they saved a lot of lives. Both he and Stephen Williford. Stephen Williford was the guy who shot him. Johnny Langendorf was the guy who drove the truck and gave pursuit. Now, the worst of us. You know, I got to tell you, just when I think this woman cannot hit another low, she always goes a little bit lower. Elizabeth Warren is, to me now, the most despicable person alive today in American politics. And that's saying something. Within minutes of the shooting, I'm talking minutes, not even hours now. They don't even wait hours. Minutes. We didn't know the identity of the shooter, the motive of the shooter, how many dead. In fact, the bodies were still in the freaking church. She goes right out on Twitter, never let a crisis go to waste, and turns the massacre of 26 people, including, by the way, an 18-month-old baby, into a political football to advance her radical gun control agenda. She goes on Twitter, and here's what she writes. I'm talking minutes after the shooting. I'm heartsick for the victims, families, and community of Sutherland Springs. But I'm more than heartsick. I'm angry. Thoughts and prayers are not enough, GOP. So right away, blaming the Republicans. We must end this violence. We must stop these tragedies. People are dying while you wait. How many kids, she goes on another tweet, how many kids must die of gun violence on playgrounds and streets every day with no attention at all before we wake up to what's happening? Another one. How many more people must die at churches or concerts or schools before we stop letting the NRA control this country's gun policies? So there she is. Republicans are to blame for this. The NRA is to blame for this. Our gun laws are to blame for this. And, you know, she is so stupid. And I'm sorry, I don't like to throw insults, but you have to with her. He applied for a gun permit and was rejected because he had been discharged from the Air Force. The guns that he bought had been obtained illegally. So this has nothing to do with the gun laws in this country. Nothing. In fact, Governor Abbott himself made that point. Roll it, Brittany.
He applied for a legal permit to carry a gun in the state of Texas and was denied that permit. And then it was after that that he was able to obtain this gun.
But that doesn't stop Elizabeth Warren. Because you see, in Chicago, which has some of the strictest gun laws, not just in the country, but in the world, they're dropping like flies. So if gun control was the answer, Chicago would be the safest city instead of the most deadliest city in America. No, what Elizabeth Warren is after is control and power. And for her and her radical left-wingers, and that's what this is all about, it is to destroy and demolish the Second Amendment. Don't believe me? Listen to Chief Spreading Bull. This is in 2012, talking to her supporters. I don't know where it was. It was at some event, political event. You can actually hear, I swear, crickets in the background. Okay, it's in the evening. What would you say, Brittany? 7, 8 o'clock at night?
Yeah, in someone's backyard.
In someone's backyard. Okay, at some kind of a mini fundraiser, I guess a barbecue fundraiser. Listen to her spill the beans. No matter what happens, we have to be opportunistic, and it's always go for the guns. Roll it, Brittany.
Politics, but do you think there's any hope for getting the things to shift on the gun question?
There has to be. The answer is there just has to be. But you know where I think it starts? I mean, just give you 2 parts about the strategy. I think one part about the strategy goes to this point of being organized. The more we get organized, the more we get empowered, the more we get the kinds of laws in Washington that reflect our values. And when I say our values, I don't mean 51-49. I mean the values of most of the American people. And that's part of what we want to harness here. We just have to get it started. We got to get that ball started rolling. That's number one. The second thing I just want to say about it is we also have to be opportunistic. You've got to start with something that's easy for people to get and that most people agree with. Assault weapons, right? The notion, not because it's the only problem, it's not the only problem, but it's one that's easy for people to get. And the idea...
We have to be opportunistic. We have to be opportunistic. Now, this coming from the woman who endorsed Hillary Clinton. I want you to think about this. This from the woman who has now been caught in lie after lie after lie on everything, literally on everything. And she's lecturing us about gun control? This very same woman who has fueled Antifa, who has fueled Black Lives Matter, who has fueled the rabid left-wing hatred for Christians, for conservatives, for people in middle America? Are you kidding me? This woman who has done more to dehumanize the opposition and dehumanize Trump supporters than almost anybody in this country? You want to know who's the problem? She's the problem. The reason why that guy picked up his gun, there are many reasons, okay? He's unhinged. But a big reason is that he so hated Christians and he so hated conservatives. Yes, he didn't like the mother-in-law. But if he just hated the mother-in-law, he would have killed the mother-in-law. He came in there to kill everybody at that church. You know why? Because they're nothing more than a bunch of Christian deplorables. And who is the one that injected this hatred into our bloodstream? It's her. It's CNN. It's Hillary Clinton. It's MSNBC. It's the radical left day after day after day. So you can take away the guns, Chief. It doesn't matter. You have so incited hatred in this country that now you have people dropping like flies because you have unleashed radical left-wing terrorism. That's what you've done. So don't tell me that gun control is the answer. We don't need gun control. You know what we really need? Liberal control. Lou in the South Shore. Go ahead, Lou.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
I'm a pastor on the South Shore, and you were talking about earlier, should pastors carry? Should church people carry? You know, I just want to first of all just say that when something like this happens in the body of Christ, we all hurt. We all pray. We all seek God on behalf of those victims, and we ache and hurt just as much. But I carry every Sunday morning, and there's others in our congregation that carry every Sunday morning, just in case something like this happens. And this is something that I've done for a long time. I've had a concealed carry permit for a long time, but really started doing it more after Las Vegas, and started carrying every Sunday after Las Vegas. But it's something that, you know, I'm the pastor of the sheep, and I don't want anybody to hurt the sheep in any way.
Pastor Lou, if you don't mind me asking, and if it's too personal, please tell me. I don't want to get you or your church in trouble. Could you give me the name of your church? Because I really want to commend you. Not on air, but there's nobody to do it on air. Okay. I really want to commend you because honestly, I think more people should follow your lead. And I'll tell you why. If, you know, I mean, I'm a Catholic, I'm not a Protestant, but God bless you. This is America. If I was ever privileged enough to have to give a speech or whatever, the one place I would feel most secure in is in your church. Because I know you've got my back and your congregants have my back.
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
She'll ask you off air. But anyway, Pastor Lou, thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it. No, I frankly, can I be honest with you? I wish my priest did that at my local parish. Here, true story. Okay, true story. This happened 3 weeks ago. I have not been back at that church since 3 weeks. Yeah, I mean, I go to church, don't get me wrong, but we had a very unnerving incident. It was at the noon mass. Okay, so we like to go to the noon mass, and then after noon mass, I take the kids to a breakfast place. They like to have pancakes. Grace and I will have eggs, but anyway, let that go. Okay, brunch. It was about 12:30, halfway, similar to this, halfway through the mass, and a clearly disturbed individual enters the church. He's clearly disturbed. He's tall, I would say about 6'3", 6'4", big, broad-shouldered, kind of muscular, to be honest. Big black beard, huge, almost like a white, maybe a little bit olive skin, but I would say more white, with black bushy hair. He comes into the church, but you know when you come in late to church, right, you normally just sit in the back. He heads straight to the front, literally the front pew. And you can tell he's not quite right in the head. I mean, you can just tell he's twitching, he's turning, he's looking, he's giving everybody very strange stares. Like there's just something not right with this guy. The first thought that entered my mind was, is he a terrorist? Is he a shooter? Is he a mass murderer? Is he carrying? And I could tell everybody in the church got extremely unnerved. Everybody was uneasy. And he's looking around, and he's making crazy faces, and he doesn't look mentally stable. Grace says to me right away, I'm extremely uncomfortable. I'm taking the kids. We're getting out. As we went to the back of the church, we met people that we know at the church. And Grace says, does he make you nervous? And all of them, you know, the ushers and so forth with the past the collection plate, they were like, oh, yes, we're all giving him a good hard look. And I asked them, I go, is anybody carrying? They go, well, no, we're not allowed in church. We can't carry. Nobody can carry into church. I took my wife. I took my kids. I went out. That's it. Now, thank the Lord. He was just a unstable individual, not right in the head, wasn't violent, nothing happened. But in this day and age, you don't know. And that my priest, good man, God bless him, but if he will not allow somebody or some people in that church to have a conceal and carry, he is putting his flock in danger. He is. My first duty as a father and a husband is to protect my wife and my Ashton and my Ava. You can't guarantee me my safety in a church, I'm going to go to another church. Call me crazy.
WRKO.
Okay, here's what I want to do. After the news break, I want to just kick it open to the phone lines, and I want to ask all of you two questions. Number one, was this another act of liberal terrorism? Violence regarding Rand Paul over the weekend, I'll get to that, but I'm talking what happened in Nevada, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the shooting in Northern Virginia of Steve Scalise and other members of Republican members of Congress. Is liberal terrorism now out of control? And number two, is it now time to start having people armed in church? I want to hear from you. Is it time to start having churches, synagogues, wherever, where people now can have concealed carry and protect from a possible bloodbath or massacre? 617-266-6868. Your calls after a short news break.
The voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 93.7 WEEI HD2 Lawrence, Boston. It's 1 o'clock.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.